Hey everybody, this is Jim at SP500chart.com. It's about 6:20 on October 13th, 2013. That's a Sunday evening here on the East Coast. And we're going to take a look at what happened last week, and we're going to look at what we think might be going on with the markets. Take a look at Friday in particular. But before we do it, I want to remind you that the website and the video are for educational purposes only. Nothing stated at the site or in this video is intended to be used as investment advice. I can draw lines on charts, but you have to draw your own conclusions from your own research and make investment decisions that are suitable for your personal financial situation. I am not a licensed financial professional. I'm just a guy who draws lines on charts. So let's take a look. The first thing I want to say before we look specifically at anything that's taken place in our chart here is just in general. What is technical analysis? What good are these trend lines? What good are support levels? What is it? Well, in my way of looking at things, technical analysis simply shows you where likely boundaries are to be formed. These boundaries, if they're strong enough, can act like brick walls. If they're not strong enough, they can act like 8-foot tall chain link fences. If they're somewhere in between, it's a 10-foot fence with some concertina wire on it. Or, if they're not very tall, it could be like a 4-foot picket fence, or it could be like a 6-inch tall speed bump. But we see that there are definitely tendencies in the markets to form trend lines, to behave when we see certain patterns develop. But depending upon what is going on outside of these technical trend lines and technical patterns, there's other things that move the markets too. It's not purely technical. Technicals help. Technicals, I think, are a very valid way to look at the markets. But there's other stuff going on. For example, if there were to be some serious attack on the U.S. mainland in the upcoming week, that would have a tremendous effect on the market. And all of these lines that I've drawn, the effect that it had would be, hey, unless it is an 8-foot thick concrete wall that's 20 feet tall, these trend lines and patterns are not going to stop the effects of an extremely major news event. They're not going to be strong enough to withstand the stress of catastrophic news. Now, here for the past 2 weeks or so, roughly, we've been dealing with this government shutdown thing. And we've seen where on the days when it looks like the government shut down, we sell off. On the days when it looks like they're going to reach a conclusion and the government's going to be, quote, open for business again, we get a nice rally. As we look at this Sunday evening here at 6:24, the futures are down roughly 100 points in the Dow and, 14, 15 points in the S&P. And I just want to remind you, until that gets ironed out, we're going to be bouncing around and we're going to be up and below and above some of these trend lines. I just don't think the market I don't think any of these trend lines have the ability to withstand what's going on in the news cycle, because we're up in an area of the chart where we're not really at major trend lines. For example, if we were to back off on a 2-day chart, I could say this would be a major trend line. If we if we were down around 1600 and we took out this line, I would say, okay, Katie bar the door, we're going to lose another 100 points, or we're going to lose another 70 or 80 points before we reach our next support level. But instead, we're up here. We're actually kind of sort of what appears to be in the middle area between some pretty major support areas and where we would expect to find some major resistance. So we're just kind of in this, there have been times when I've described it as just kind of the messy middle, where things tend to get jerked around pretty easily. So, that said, futures are looking like, if they don't figure out something overnight, we're going to be looking at a down day tomorrow, and that's fine. You know, it's just, what can you do? All you can do is guess at this point. So we were up about 11 points on Friday, and by the way, the week really, I'm going to say the week was fairly decent to us, because we knew when we were coming into trading on Monday the 7th, we knew that we were in a, well, actually by Tuesday the 8th, we had identified this triangle pattern with the idea that whichever way it goes, up or down, we would be looking at a move of approximately, we'll measure it right here, we were looking for a move that was about the height of our triangle, and it broke down, and we got that nice minimum move actually down underneath 1650, just like this pattern was supposed to do. But what happened is then we started to get some good news, and we had really 3 days of strong rallying, taking us from about 1650 to over 1700. It looks to me right now, if nothing changes overnight or in the early morning, then it looks to me like we're probably going to be heading back down under 1700 to likely test at least our apex area here at about 1685 perhaps. Outside chance we could get held up here around 1692, but you know, to be just totally blunt, until this government shutdown, debt ceiling thing gets resolved, the market's going to be squirrely. So just be prepared for that. I think we have seen enough evidence that tells us the S&P and the broader markets want to go higher. And the reason I say that is that we get a little bit of bad news and we sell off a little bit. When that bad news is erased, we rally a lot. So I'm thinking that this market still wants to go up and set new highs. But I also believe that the uncertainty of the debt ceiling and the uncertainty of the government shutdown has got to get dealt with, or we're going to continue to see some volatility. Now, just as an exercise, I want to take a guess. This is a guess at a potential rising trend channel, because I think we've got enough touches in this rising portion right here over the past 3 days, or rather 2 days. We've got enough going on up here for us to look at that and say this looks like a pretty well established line of resistance, because we've hit it 1, 2, 3, not quite 4, 5, at least 5 times. Now, where would a likely bottom line be? Well, I'm going to go with the obvious thing. We're going to create a parallel line. I'm going to move it right there. And I'm not I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know whether this is worth 2 cents or not. But sometimes when you're doing charting, it's fun to also not only go with the tried and true, the established things, but it's fun sometimes just to throw a line up there and say, let's see if this sticks. Let's see if this line has anything to say about the direction of the market. Because oftentimes when we establish a new upwards move, we do so in a parallel channel. So since we know, I think we know, we got a pretty good line right here for our top line, I'm just going to throw this up there with our low on the 9th as our starting point for our bottom line. Let's see. Let's just see what happens. So for right now, it looks like coming into trading on Monday, October 14th, I would be looking for some selling pressure. Again, unless something gets resolved with these two issues. Now, I mentioned it looked like we may have been in another situation where we were forming an inverted head and shoulders, and just kind of off the cuff, I said, but if the past 6 months is any indication, we may not form that right shoulder. And lo and behold, that made me look smart, because it looks like the S&P wanted to move up above where we might expect a neckline to form, and here we are. Now, it is also possible going forward we could have an upsloping neckline, but we don't know that yet, and we never did get our right shoulder, so we're not really sure on this right here either. But I did point out that the target from this, if it is correct, if this is another little reversal here off of our sell-off, then it looks like we would have a target of around 1740. But I don't think that's going to get hit until Washington gets their act together. So coming into the week, I would expect the markets to be jerked around by debt ceiling, to be jerked around by open or closed, shut down government, and just be prepared for that. But from what I see in general terms, I think the underlying current in the markets is they want to go higher. So I'm sticking with my long positions, and guys, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That is never what this website and what these videos are about. It's more about just pointing out trend lines and then letting you guys figure out for yourselves, is this something I want to trade on or is it not? Am I satisfied with the long-term technical lines for long-term investment, or do I want to day trade based on all these little patterns and channels on the 5-minute chart? I don't care. You need to figure that out, and that's your responsibility. But what I want to show you is simply the fact that we do have a strong propensity. For example, back here, let's make a parallel line. There we had a nicely formed channel coming up right here. Nicely formed channel coming down. Got over the top of it. Are we now forming an upwards channel? And if so, will it go on to make new highs? Interesting to note that this is at a significantly steeper pitch than what we see back here. So with that in mind, we may be revisiting this whole idea of these two gray lines right here, and we could be coming back to something that looks a little bit more like this and maybe a little bit wider. So guys, look, that is your video for October, for the week ending October 11th, and I would just say hang with it until these guys in Washington get their together. And once they do, I believe we're going to see a market that wants to test these highs of 1730, and because I think there's more steam left in this market. And the reason I say that is I don't see a top yet. It just looks like a series of upwards moves and then corrections, and then a larger upwards move, and then another corrective trend, and then another move up. So until we see something that looks like an ominous top, I think we got to go and give the markets the benefit of the doubt that they still want to go up. So guys, there's your video for the week ending October 11th. Appreciate you taking time out of your weekend to watch this. Thanks again. Take care.